There's a lot to do. It is 6 p.m. We are the PoP Baking Club. We are a club that gets together twice a week, but on Wednesdays we get together. I lecture demo a recipe, and this week we are doing cinnamon buns, cinnamon rolls. It's a yeast dough. I'm using instant yeast. We are a group of people. You don't have to join or pay anything. It's free. You just come and you show up and you get to learn every single thing that I know in my lifetime of being in the industry and as a baker and a teacher at the college level. What I do is I try to bridge the gap between professional bakers and home bakers, because I don't think there's any difference between the two except knowledge, information, and I am trying to give that information in a way that is just like we give people the first day, day one in a professional seeking program. My name is Kathleen. I am a certified executive pastry chef. I am now teaching on TikTok. It's full time. I work all week getting ready for these Wednesday demos. My viewers picked the recipe, and last week they snuck it in on me because I told them it was going to be complicated. And I was right. Just so you guys all know, this is a complex series of events that's going to take place in front of you right now. But I think I've got it under control. We'll see. Plus I'm sweating. It's super hot here, and I'm just gonna let the sweat. I just put a little makeup on, but like, why? I don't know. I have been in this industry my entire life. I got my first job at a country club pool cabana when I was 15, and I used to go up and sneak off and watch the chefs with chainsaws, cutting up ice sculptures and just like putting chicken salads into cored out pineapple boats and things. So I love the food industry. I love baking. And when I ran my own business and I was self-taught, I would have given anything to have somebody help me bridge the gap. I would make a lemon curd 20 times and it worked great. Then I'd make it once and it didn't. And I had no idea why. I would just have to pitch it and start over. So I am trying to get people to think like an ingredient, to plan a little bit better, to read through their recipes in advance, and to take the time to enjoy the process, because the practice of pastry is about building a practice where you're not rushing through or just getting something done or checking it off your list. You are actually learning and growing and developing skills that work outside the kitchen through the process of how you approach your baking. And that's where we are today. We are working on a yeast dough. A yeast dough typically comes together pretty quickly, but the main theme of today's class is choice. Every single choice that I have made, even before I got here right now, the choice of what I have in the cooler still, the choice of what I have at room temperature behind me, the choice of what I'm going to put the made up product into, whether or not I'm going to refrigerate something or freeze it, how long I'm going to mix it, and how I'm going to adjust things is all about choice, because look how sweaty I am, okay? It is hot and humid in here. And when you're making certain things, you can't even work. I'll show you what hygroscopic looks like. These are my rainbow sugar petals. They're made out of gum paste. Look at how soft these are. They're mushy and soft and bendable. I just leave these here. They're all gonna smush together. But hygroscopic means that they just pull the moisture from the air. And it's imperative that you watch what I do and take notes, because we are going to be making decisions. And while I'm working, I want you to think about a couple things. To think, what else did I bake? What else do I do that is like this? And how can I make a connection? Or what is this ingredient? What lives inside of it? And what is it doing? Because sometimes you might think, why isn't she adding more flour? The dough is so sticky. So then I will talk about gluten development and time and temperature. I have a thermometer. I have all my tools pulled. These things are all going to make sense. I'm going to get started right away, and I always start with a fit check. My fit check is here to show you that the most important thing to me is that I'm safe and sanitary. So I start out with short fingernails, which I just trimmed, no nail polish, no jewelry, very minimal makeup, and I pull my hair back. This is a one-piece outfit that I work in, and it's easy to pull on and off in case I need to, and I wear clogs. These are kitchen clogs. This is my uniform that I wear every day. I'm gonna get my countertop cleaned up, wash my hands, and get my mixer plugged in. I've already cleaned my countertop and everything, but I'm going to sanitize it with a little bit of Clorox bleach. Yeah. I'm gonna get a clean apron on. I have clean towels. In here, I use a fresh one every day, and I put a clean apron on every day. You can see here that I've pulled all of my tools out, so I don't have to run around my kitchen. It's funny because I haven't made a yeast dough in a while, and there are different tools. I just take a Clorox or a Lysol wipe, and I sanitize my countertop. This is especially important if you are using TCS foods like eggs and raw eggs and things that can cross-contaminate and make people sick. Okay, that's like animal products and things like that. So let me get my ingredients. And the reason I'm starting this recipe immediately is because it takes quite a while. I mean, literally, I think it's gonna take me 20 to 30 minutes to get this dough to set. And the first thing that I did is I made an executive decision because this is the dough from yesterday. That is my sweet dough from yesterday. And I figured, well, the butter's room temperature, and I want you to think about all this, butter's room temperature, but my eggs, which I scaled, and my milk are cold. And I did that because yesterday when I temped my dough, it was like 87 degrees, which is too high for a yeast dough. And let me grab my recipe. My recipes live on my link tree. This is on Substack. I put this ingredient function chart that is very, very detailed. It is worth a lot for you to go look at this and print it out because I put in this exact recipe in the exact grams as this Peter Reinhardt recipe, the percentages in baker's percentage, what the ingredients have inside of them, and then what is the specific ingredient function to this recipe. Because milk does different things in a yeast roll than it does in a cake, let's say. Similar, they all emulsify, they have dairy properties, but it's very specific. So this is gold, I love it. This is fascinating, okay? This is the recipe we're doing tonight. It is an enriched dough, which means the butter content is under 20%, but I'm comparing it to a Cyril Hitz similar recipe. Peter Reinhardt is the Bread Baker's Apprentice author. He has a TED Talk, you should Google him. Cyril Hitz and him, I think, are friends. Peter Reinhardt wrote his foreword, and so they work together and there's some overlap, but you can look at the baker's percentage and compare. The brioche dough comes in 3 styles, and a brioche is when you have more than 50% of butter. That's called a rich dough. So we have enriched, which is what we're making today, and then we have a rich dough. And he named it Rich Man's, Middle Class, and Poor Man's. I don't really like that title, but you kind of get what it means. Kind of goes back to Marie Antoinette and when there were, you know, these layers of if you were rich, you could afford a lot of butter. But I think we're there again because butter is so expensive. You can see how much butter goes into these and then how the other ingredients play off of it. So this is on the link tree. This is free to you. It's on the link tree. The recipe we're doing right now, which is what I want you to pay attention to. This is my recipe formulator. This is how I write and read recipes. This is cinnamon roll, the Bread Baker's Apprentice, Peter Reinhardt. These are the ingredients in the order that I am going to be mixing and using them. This is the amount in grams that the recipe includes. And then the center part, they're the same numbers because I did a 100% recipe, but if I'd cut this recipe in half, this would be half the amount. And then over here are the baker's percentages. And the baker's percentages are what you see here. And if you don't know what baker's percentage is right now, look it up, Google it, get familiar with it. And then I left room if you want to print this out to take notes. This is a modified direct dough method. Modified direct dough means things are going to go into the mixer all at the same time, but it's modified because we start with our fat and sugars being creamed on the paddle. So that's right there is information for you. Cinnamon roll. And what I do is I look at the amounts and then I go to my ingredients and I have made labels and scaled them. And I use 2 scales. I use one scale. This is an inexpensive Ascali. It weighs up to 11 pounds. It's like $29. Comes in cute colors. That's for anything over 20 grams. And this $9.99 jewelry scale from Amazon does anything under 20 grams. So many of you have been coming in the comment section and saying that you're still having trouble with small amounts like teaspoons and tablespoons, which I use Jessica Reed's Baker's Appendix to do my conversions. I use one resource. That's my favorite resource. I think it works. I've used it for 10 years. It seems very stable. And I'm on it. I convert 5 recipes a day. So this is on my link tree, and so are my recommendations for scales, just so you know. So I go through and I use my painter's tape and I put them on these pieces of acrylic from the hardware store, and I load this up, and then I go through and I write, and then that becomes a lid, and I have a stack of lids, and then I use my lid to scale, and this is how I end up getting my scalings. But before I get started, I have read the recipe, I have rewritten it, diagrammed it out, and this is what I do. So this, first of all, I put it into my formulator, which is going to be available to you on my website, hopefully at the end of August. And then I literally read through the recipe, I write it out the way I think, and then I take notes about the makeup, about how it's supposed to look and taste, anything that's helpful to me, and I put it in one of these sheet protectors. And so now this is what I'm doing. I don't use the paper. So now I have this. So I'm going to go through and verify that I have the right ingredients at the right amount. And this might seem like an extra step that's like, why are you bothering to do that? But this is the moment you will find out that you forgot something, you didn't scale something, you need another tool, like maybe you have your lemon and you don't have your microplane, so you need to go get that. This is the time to check your work. Baking well is a process of checks and balances, and so this is the best check of all, and it doesn't create extra work. It actually prevents problems. So in here I have sucrose, which is table sugar, at 92 grams, and that's going to go in the bowl on the paddle with 7 grams of salt and 78 grams of butter. And like I said, I cube it when I scale it, and this is room temperature. Then the next thing that's going to go in the bowl is going to be the eggs, and these are cold because I decided they should be cold. Typically you want them warm, but it is a hot day and I have a hot kitchen, so these are cold. I have 47 grams of egg. Now in this recipe, you can either use lemon extract or zest. I prefer fresh lemon zest. I love it. I think it really shows through. Now the next thing is interesting. This is a pound of all-purpose flour. This is 454 grams, and it's actually 453.6, but I round up to 454. Now I had a choice between using unbleached bread flour and AP, all-purpose flour. I chose less protein, less gluten, softer cinnamon roll. And then I have instant yeast, 6 grams of instant yeast. I do not use dry active yeast. Dry active yeast that needs to be proofed, you have to pour warm water on it, is outdated. They should stop putting it in stores. I don't know why it's still on the market. It has a much harsher process, and in that harsh process, it kills a lot of the yeast. Yeast are alive. Even when they're dry like this, they're still alive. They just need water to be awakened magically, and warmth. But the active dry, there's so many, the percentage of dead is so high compared to instant yeast that you have to proof it. Instant yeast, not only do you not need to dissolve it in water or proof it in water, but it can go directly in the dough. So I use instant yeast, but the fact that it says rapid rise also makes me mad. They should take, it's not rapid rise, it's instant yeast. And in this case, in these recipes, in these books, that are written by master bakers who set the industry standards. I mean, they're truly masters of the entire industry. They use instant yeast. So throw away your active dry, tell your manufacturers to stop selling it, tell your grocery store they're silly. I don't think they know what they're doing. And then the last thing we're gonna add is whole milk. And I had a choice between buttermilk, and it's cold as well. Can you see the fat ring on there? Whole milk has fat. Buttermilk, mine has like, 1% to 2% fat, but a lot of buttermilk is made from skim and it has no fat in it. Fat is good for baking. Fat, it kind of coats the gluten and softens it. So anytime you have in an enriched dough, dairy, sugars, fats, eggs, that is going to make your dough softer. So whenever you have an egg bread, it's softer than a lean bread like a baguette. An enriched dough means that it has less than 20% butter, but it also has these other things that soften and weaken the gluten. Sugar, dairy, and eggs, especially the egg yolk. That is why I did not choose buttermilk, although I love buttermilk. I drink buttermilk every single day. I think it's delicious and I think it's healthy, so I really like it. Then the final thing I'm going to make that's on the recipe is the cinnamon sugar. I have a recipe that is included in those, but you should know that cinnamon sugar in general, when you shake it onto something or you're adding it to your cinnamon toast, or if you are eating professional bakery, is about 5% baker percentage. So 100% sucrose to 5% cinnamon. That's the ratio. And that is going to be incorporated separately, and I'll do that after I get this going. So I am going to get this going. I'm going to take this, I have a piece of painter's tape up here. I put it onto my sleeve and I hang it on the wall. And now all I have to do is look up there and it stays clean, and I'm good to go. Once I start mixing, it's going to get loud. I think it's annoying, and I considered going back there and talking to you from back there, but I think you should hear it be annoying, and I think you should internalize how long this is going to take. I made this yesterday, and I've made this for years. I used to make it every Christmas for my family. I'd make it the night before, all the way up. It took all day. And then I would get it in the fridge, and then somebody would get up at 4 in the morning and pull it from the fridge so that I could get it in the oven around 6 or 7 a.m. I'm very familiar with this recipe. You need some strength for this. So I didn't want it to be bread flour because I know that's a little sturdier than I want. I want soft and pillowy. And soft and pillowy is not just about the flour, it's about how long you proof it. And every step we do is gonna get us soft and pillowy and tender. This recipe is so versatile. You can do a sticky bun, cinnamon roll, and also make it into other things. You could thumbprint it, you could do a lot. A lot. It's very versatile, but it is not a brioche, and we will talk about that later. All right, I'm gonna start mixing. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. There are going to be a couple of tools that we are going to need. One thing about yeast dough is you do not want to tear it. You don't want to tear it. So you don't want to be pulling it, ripping it, grabbing it, cutting and pulling. You're tearing apart threads. That's what gluten is. So we're going to use a couple things right now for the bowl. I am going to use a spatula, but I'm going to use it not in a spreading way. I'm going to use it more in a sharp edge way to get things off the bowl. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to be using a bowl scraper. This is for the counter. This is for a bowl. You should get a firm one for bread. It shouldn't be flexible. And you're going to sharp around the bowl. On the countertop, you're going to use a metal bench knife, and we aren't cutting. I see people doing this and cutting and sliding. That is not how you use a bench knife with yeast dough. You cut and then you pull the dough away. Cut and pull the dough away. You don't slide. I mean, it makes me cringe, especially if we're working on a wood table. So this is what I'm going to use. Once I get all my dough in here, it's going to be very slack. It's going to be sticky, and it's going to take 10 minutes to come together. But when I do want to give it a little help, sharp. Okay, sharp. Not pulling and rubbing and tearing. Not going to do that, because you can see the tears in the dough. And that can be fixed with time if you just let your dough kind of relax and it'll come back together. But it's not good, and it's not a good practice. So what we're gonna do is start with our 3 first ingredients. And if you haven't noticed, I don't need my recipe because I know the modified direct dough method. And I've checked all my scalings, and I have everything I need in here. I have these grouped together for how they're gonna go. The eggs are gonna go in next with the lemon, and then the flour, yeast, and milk are gonna go. So I get these all in a grouping, and I can physically see where they are in a row. This physically helps me to avoid mistakes. I'm gonna start with these 3 ingredients that are going in the bowl. And I always take my tape that has my scalings on here and I put them off to the side. I don't throw them away. We have 3 ingredients that are going into the bowl on the paddle. This is a paddle, and this is a dough hook. And I have a 30-year-old KitchenAid, and if it's going to die, it's going to be on bread, because this is going to go so long. My machine's motor is going to get so hot, and it's really hard on a machine. That is why King Arthur stopped selling these. They're not the best for bread. So if you are a bread aficionado, this is not your machine. You probably want to get one that has a spiral mixer that works better for bread. It's more efficient, creates less friction and heat, which is great. But this recipe really works for the home baker because Peter Reinhardt understands what we're dealing with, and I think that's amazing. So here's the soft butter. I'm gonna scrape. A lot of times in my videos, I edit out all the scraping and cleaning that I do, but there's a lot that goes on. And what I'm going to do with the butter is get it going, and all of this is going to get creamed on medium high, which is what the recipe says, okay? But I want to start the butter. I just want to start getting it going. It's really soft and it's fine, but you want that to be a habit, because anytime you dump everything in the bowl, it has to catch up. And that's just not thinking like an ingredient. That's thinking like you just want to dump everything in and get it off your mind. I want to think about what's happening. And I have really nice soft butter, so I'm going to have it on low while I add these ingredients. And then I'm going to slowly turn it up and let it go. So now we're going to be hearing the machine for a while. After this has been creamed on medium high, I'm going to add the eggs, and I'm going to zest an entire lemon directly into the egg batter. And I'm going to use a microplane. This is very fine. If you have one that's more like a cheese grater or you're using a box grater, you are going too deep into the pit. Our lemons, and see how I even do this? That way I won't forget. I could just put a lemon on there, but I like having the amount. So I'm going to take that off. But if I were to use a different grater, I'm going to be getting underneath this beautiful yellow, which is the only place the flavor and oils are. The pith is the white part inside, and that's bitter. So when you're doing this, you're really like playing a violin. It's very gentle. You're not bouncing. And I used to put together all the toolkits for the schools that I worked at, because I did all the orientations and the new students. And sometimes I'd have to talk to the tool people as we were reworking the toolkit to be better. There were chefs, like culinary chefs, so they didn't understand what we needed. So you need a microplane that's specifically for zest and has little itty bitty little things. All right, so this is just going to get light and fluffy. All right, so this is light. I'm going to show it to you. And then, all right, so this is what it looks like, and this is how I scrape a bowl. You can even hear the graininess. You can hear the grains of sugar. They're going to dissolve a little bit, but not entirely. And you can see exactly how soft this is. So I'm really just scraping it to verify that it is on the bottom of the bowl. Things are being picked up and that it's doing well. And then see how here are my instructions, how convenient that is. So now what I'm going to do is add the eggs. I'm going to do this a little longer, and then I'm going to add the eggs, and it says to whip, so I'm going to take that at a faster speed. And take the egg container. When I scale eggs, look at what they look like. They get oxidized because I estimate my eggs, stir them up, I don't aerate them, and then I put them all in one container and I pour them onto a deli on a scale, and then they go in the fridge, and they oxidize just a little bit, but they're absolutely fine. So now I'm going to turn this down. And this is really going to separate, and it's not emulsified. Remember, emulsification is when things go together, and usually there's something that brings our ingredients together, an emulsifier. And in this case, it is our egg yolk, but for now, they're separated and coagulated because they don't like each other yet, but we're going to give them time. Temperature, they're going to be, because I used cold eggs, we're going to have that effect, but it's so warm in here, they will warm up. And I'm going to scrape it, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like, and then I'm going to zest all the zest. I'm going to show you how long in real time it takes me to get zest of one lemon zested into. So you can see that is coagulated. It is it's not, I don't know what the word is, unemulsified. And as we turn it up, it starts to work very quickly. And sometimes I'll do like just a quick bang, and there's no wheat in here. There's no gluten possibility, so you can't really overwork it, but it's really not smooth, and that is okay at this stage. Okay, it's gonna come together really fast. We'll see the magic of lecithin, which lives naturally in an egg yolk. Watch how it comes together. Says whip. I'm going to go ahead and add the lemon zest now, but you can see already how much more emulsified it is. It's not there 100%, but we are getting there. And I'm going to add the lemon zest, and then we'll see it come together. So this is how I zest a lemon, very carefully. I'm right-handed, but you want to keep your non-dominant hand like this. If I use my strong hand and do this, it's going to go right past the lovely exterior and right into the pith. So what I want to do is have control of my tool, and I want to go around and I want to look. And it's all collecting in here. It smells beautiful. I can already smell it. Gorge. And I'm not going to touch it. And when you zest directly into fat, you are preserving essential oils that are volatile. Essential oils naturally live in this lemon zest. And it's volatile, meaning it'll dry out like right away. So you never zest in advance. I'm not scaling it because I don't want to weigh it and waste all the beautiful oils on a container. So I'm doing it directly into my fat. Now, if you want to add this to your sugars, like some recipes recommend, or you wanted to add it to your flours, you may. Just don't get it on your parchment or your containers or anywhere other than its intended destination, because all of those volatile, gentle oils, you need all of them. That's where all the flavor is. Now you could use extract. This is 5 grams or something like that, but I have pure lemon extract. You could use lemon paste, or you could use, and I'm considering using these bitters. Bitters are also like an extract. They're made from alcohol, meaning they take all the herbs and the peels and all the essence of the food, and they extract it through this alcohol extraction. But there is one in here, and I write down the flavor profile because this bitter cube, they do such a good job of blending the flavors. I like this one. It's citrus, dried fruit, and vanilla. So I actually think I'm going to add a little bit to this because I've already made one other the other way. But meanwhile, what I want to do is go on my lemon and look around where I missed some yellow. And then I want to just go gently over all those parts. And then this lemon is going to dry out so fast, it's unbelievable. So I'm going to take a deli container with a lid, and I'm just going to pop this back in the refrigerator. I'm going to use it to add lemon juice to my water. I'm going to cook with it, and I'm going to use it. You know what? Now that I'm in here, I'm going to do this. I'm going to pull my dough from the refrigerator. This is this exact dough I made yesterday, and I've made decisions of why it's this way, but here it is. I'm going to put it right there. I don't want to touch the lemon, and I also don't want to bang, because these I've seen, they come out of the handle, they get all warped and bent, they're terrible. So you want to take care of your tools. So I am going to use another spatula to gently get all of that zest out of there. I don't need to touch it. I don't need to bang it on the bowl. I don't need to damage my tools. This tool, unless it gets dull, should last a very long time. So there we go. It's insanely lemony. Oh, absolutely beautiful. And I'm going to show you what it looks like before I mix it because it's so pretty. Isn't that beautiful? Look how much from one lemon, just gently zested. So now I'm going to go ahead and pick up the speed a little bit. And so there will be some bits and pieces now, and some people hate lemon zest because they don't like the texture. So that's why you have an option to use extract or something else. I would not use lemon juice. It has too much water in it. Extract is alcohol, which burns off during baking. So stick with the extract or a zest. It's really about the moisture balance at this point. I'm going to use my handy dandy temperature tool, and it's kind of cold, which is good, very good. So this is supposed to be whipped in and starting, you know, it's already light, but now it's emulsified. I'm going to clean it up one more time. And then I'm going to talk about adding the dries all at once to the bowl. And what you need to know is whenever you are doing a yeast dough, I forgot the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? I'm just going to estimate my bitters. Whenever you are adding and doing a yeast dough, you do not have to sift. It's going in here. It doesn't need to be sifted. It's not a delicate cake. It's a yeast dough, number one. Number two, oh, it smells so good. What you want to do is to add the liquid first. And if we didn't have the fats, if this was just a dinner roll with no fat, and it was direct, not modified by creaming the fat, I would always put the liquid in first and then the flour and the yeast. You want to add the liquid first because you do not want the dries getting stuck to the edge of the bowl or anything. You want them to have the best ability to be dispersed, because when you are doing this process, you are literally dispersing, making cohesive, and developing the gluten. There's a lot that goes on when you're doing this. Oh, my hands smell so good. Okay. So what I'm going to do is we are going to add this and then mix on low until a ball forms. And that's actually the part that's going to take a long time. It's going to take a minute for a ball to form. And we aren't going to add extra flour. The urge for everybody who's learning how to work with yeast dough is to add flour, and all you're doing is throwing off the recipe. You could end up adding like a quarter cup of extra flour, and that's going to throw it all off. All right, so what I'm going to do is put the milk in, and I'm going to make sure to get all that lovely fat off the edges. This is a really nice local fatty whole milk. I actually drink every day in a grainy cereal that's high fiber that I enjoy. And now that the milk is in there, I'm just going to go around and just scrape the butter and the fat and the sugar that's stuck. It actually looks like butter when you make it, how the fat like floats. Okay. By scraping, I'm not mixing, I'm not overdoing anything, I'm not doing anything in terms of harming. But when you do things by hand, you give things a chance at the least aggressive level. So now I have the milk in there. I'm going to show you what it looks like, and then we are going to add the dries, and I'm going to start mixing it. And I'm still using the paddle, which is insane. Very interesting. Look at that. Doesn't that look like when you make butter and all the buttermilk in the water gets slapped out and then you're left with butter? I think it does. So now I'm going to take the flour first, and then the yeast. I'll put these over here. I have all my labels off the lids. This is all-purpose flour, 11.2%. Is that what I said? And I'm going to dump it in. And I'm taking my instant yeast, which I love looking at. These are yeast that have been basically like freeze-dried, sort of. They are alive. They are just waiting, just like the gluten. There's all this possibility in here. And right now is when it starts happening. The moisture is going to begin to, let me get my ingredients here, is going to begin to interact with the flour, because in the flour is the possibility of gluten. You have glutenin and gliadin, and they're just there. They're inert. But when you add that water and start agitating it, they go from being like just kind of like to starting to unravel, line up, and then at some point when you develop the gluten, it starts to connect and create these strong structures. It creates these strong structures that begin to make your cell walls, and all the water and the starches and everything makes the walls, and they're all wet, and they hold air, which is CO2, which the yeast are going to expel. And then as they expand in the oven and then they dry out, they become the firm structure of our dough, our bread. The dough transforms into bread. And then when it dries out and we cool it off properly, we have a perfect structure. So that's what's happening right now. And I'm going to show you what's going on in the bowl, and then I'm going to turn it up. I want you to notice that it looks like batter. Looks like batter, and we're going to keep this on like this while it forms a dough. And what we want to have happen is all of this from the edges gets picked up and becomes a ball. Not a perfect ball, because once it's a ball, we're going to develop it more with a dough hook. But we need this to come off the edges. We need it to start to gather together, and we need the gluten to start to become cohesive and make connections. That's what's going to happen. That is the magic of a gluten, wheat, yeast dough in essence. So to help it along so I don't have to do this forever and ever, and also just to get things, so see how I'm going along the edge? I'm not smearing it like I would if I were doing a cake. I'm doing it so that it's sharp and I'm pulling it away. So I'll show you what I mean. Like this. See how you can cut it and it falls down? So it is starting to hold together. It's not like a cake batter. Already looks better. So I'm going to turn it up to, what we're going to do is develop this, I'm going to shape it. It's going to go in its own bowl. And then I'm going to take this, pat it out, roll it out, fill it with cinnamon sugar, and I'm going to shape it and get it into the freezer. And I'm going to save those for next week. This is part 1 of 2 parts. So next week we'll finish it. And that's why I said I didn't know if I could do it this way. If you are doing this process start to finish, you need a minimum of 4 hours. And in a 2-hour session, this is the best way that I could do it. So we're gonna have to finish it next week, and I hope you guys all understand. I'm gonna go ahead and take all my sticker ingredients and put them to the side. I'm not gonna throw them away in case I need them. Yep, you would be very tempted to add flour, and I am imploring you to not. Just don't. It will come together, and I'll show it to you soon. But here's what I want to show you. If you are getting into bread making of any kind, if you're interested in cinnamon rolls, brioche, anything focaccia that has yeast in it, okay? I don't care if it's sourdough, which is a natural yeast. Oftentimes, even sourdough uses a pinch of instant yeast. These are the books you're going to want. The Bread Baker's Apprentice, look at this, 15th anniversary. And the biggest change is that he added grams. Excellent. Beautiful book. And then in it talks about everything you need to learn how to do bread, literally. And what we're paying attention to tonight is we are going from the 12 stages of yeast dough production. We today are going to be doing steps 1 through 8, okay? We mise en place, which in baking is really just scaling. That's why I say scaling. That's our mise en place, and you saw me do that. We are going to mix it, which is what we're doing right now. That's stage 2. Stage 3 is primary fermentation, which is this. This is what I did overnight. It's bulk fermentation. Okay, so that's why I like this book. It starts from the beginning, and then here is a whole part on brioche dough explaining what it does, and then finally is the recipe we are doing tonight. And the only difference between this book that I've been using for 20 years and the new one is it has grams, which is amazing. The other book I highly recommend is Baking Artisan Pastries and Bread by Cyril Hitz, foreword by Peter Reinhardt. So when you guys are asking me, who do I use, who do I trust? You have to go back to the people who have been industry disruptors and their teachers. Peter Reinhardt teaches at Johnson & Wales. That's where I saw him last. Just amazing. Okay, so this is a great book, and it's interesting to compare the two. And then the third thing, and these are all Germans, okay? I did an exam, 4-hour exam, and I did dinner rolls. I did 3 makeups. I did a knot. I did a crisscross. One had poppy seeds. And I did them very dark, okay? And I just trusted it, that's how I believe in, and I'm just going to do it. And if I get dinged for it, I don't know what to say. So toward the end of the exam, before I got my results, like they're busy over there all talking and tasting and taking notes, and I was doing dishes and cleaning up, and they were all like eating it, and I was like, oh God, they don't like it. And so then I go into my exam review, and they literally said, where did you learn to bake dinner rolls at dark? And I said, well, I went to French pastry school, and I just really like dark European bake. And they said, I have not had that good of a dinner roll since the last time I was in Germany. I was like, thank you so much. I mean, I was so excited. And so I implore you, and in this book and in this cinnamon roll, and we will get to it next week, I am going to discuss how to properly bake cinnamon rolls and how they're different than a caramel roll or a sticky bun. Because if you do not learn why and how to bake things properly, then none of this matters. You can just go bake, have a good time. It matters because it's everything matters. Those stages matter, and they add up to extraordinary results that maybe people don't know they want or need, but then they eat it and it evokes something in human beings that is in us. It's ancient and it's amazing. So this is the bread book by Jeffrey Hamelman, who I was lucky enough to meet. Love him. And this book I've used to teach artisan bread. It's my favorite for teaching. It's my favorite for really comprehensive bread. But I will tell you, it looks like this. There are the pre-ferments, the bread, the final dough. It's not that it's mathy, but you better know baker's math. And if you don't, you need to learn it. And that's what my formulator is going to help everybody do. But the way that I do these recipes is I read through all the head notes. And I take notes. These are my notes. Look at how many notes I took just for tonight's thing. know this, and I already know what I'm doing. I did this because I needed to get it just into my head before I started, and this is all my information, okay? And so I go through and I read everything that they say, and then I look through the recipe, highlight it, convert it. Those are my old conversions from forever ago, and when I compared them to the new book, they were spot on. I was pretty excited. So this is, you know, all the information. It's really helpful to sit on this, read it, sit, think about it. And then Cyril hits, you know, he does the basic sweet dough, the pecan sticky bun, the sweet glazed cinnamon bun, and then from another book, I have all these fillings and toppings. Everything from cream cheese glaze, honey almond glaze, old-fashioned caramel glaze, and then I took this basic sweet dough and I put it in my formulator, and that is what gives me the power. All right, so this is done, this is done. What else do we have to talk about here? Let's take a look at this because I'm gonna scrape it, and I'm gonna show you before and after. Here we go. See how it's all on the wall of the bowl. So what I wanna do is lift it up, and you can see it's very shaggy, okay? There's a shaggy dough, and I don't know if I can do this while also holding the camera. But I go around the edge. Do you see how it's grabbing on? Do you see that? It's falling. I'm not stretching it. It pulls off. Did you see that? When I do this, I cut it basically. See how it's falling off? I help it fall off. I don't want it to tear, okay? I'm not gonna pull it, drag it, stretch it. Don't do that. Because you're basically setting yourself back. That gluten's all gonna have to restructure. So I'm gonna go underneath and just help it make sure that as I am turning the paddle that I'm getting the effect I want. And I don't need to go fast either, okay? So 2 things you guys have learned. Don't add extra flour and don't paddle it super fast. I'm gonna turn it just up a little bit and I watch it. This is not the time to walk away. You need to be really engaged. And if you're new to it, every time I look at it, I'm gathering information. I'm realizing exactly when it comes together. And the thing is if you were doing this without me explaining it, this is already hot. You might be thinking, because we read recipes, it says about 5 minutes and it takes you 20, and you're thinking, what am I doing wrong? We are listening to the dough, and the dough needs more time. It is so wet and the humidity is so high. That humidity gets in my flour. It affects every ingredient in here, and it makes it stickier and wetter. Can't dry out as we are working. That's just what happens. So I'm not going to tell it what to do. It's going to tell me what to do. The other thing is you can't walk away from this because these machines vibrate and they will walk right off the counter. And I also want to lock it so that it can't bang. I want to really, so I'm going to leave it in there at a moderate speed. So let's go through the ingredients really fast and talk about what we are looking at in terms of what the ingredients are doing in this recipe. We have sucrose, okay? Sucrose is one of the ingredients that's enriching. It's going to soften and coat the gluten and kind of make it so that it can't grab on. And if you think about gluten being like fingers, when you have really dry hands and you grab someone else's hand, you can grab on really tight. But if you put a ton of Vaseline or butter or lotion or oil, your hands would slide. It's the same thing with sugar, egg yolks, dairy, especially the fat, and sugar, and then finally our butter. Because if you make a lean dinner roll that's crunchy, like those really good crunchy hard rolls you get at a restaurant, I love making a soft dinner roll, and I do that with a little bit of butter, a little shortening, a little bit of milk powder, things like that. And that softens our dough. So that's why we have a nice soft but well structured. We have a nice softening of the dough, but with this cinnamon dough, we want it to have structure. We don't want it to be mushy or gooey. We want nice structure that's soft. And when you bake these, you bake them together, and that keeps them soft anyway. The top gets baked well, but it stays soft on the inside. Next one is the salt. So the sucrose was at 20% baker's percentage, and the salt is at 1.5%. I'm using a fine grained sea salt. Salt does a couple things with yeast doughs. It helps with gluten production unless you use too much, and then it inhibits it. So it helps fix, it's hygroscopic, and so it helps fix some of the water in there. If you leave salt out of a yeast dough, it'll never come together. It'll stay mushy and soft. Salt is very important. All right, next we have butter. This butter is under 20%. That is why this is an enriched. That's the title of the style of dough, enriched dough. And this has a 17% butter to baker's percentage. Inside butter lives fat, water, proteins, which are like casein and whey proteins, and then some sugar, which is lactose. These things give us the Maillard reaction. They allow browning. They give us emulsification, which makes things soft. And the fat in this butter softens the gluten very, very much. Makes it very tender. So we get good Maillard browning, moisture retention. It's tender, because our goal for this is to have a soft, light, tender, comforting, slightly sweet, well-baked roll. And I think that's a good description. We add the fat at the beginning of mixing for doughs that are under 20%. If we were making a brioche, you would notice the butter gets added after you make the yeast dough and get it developed. Then you add the fat, because you can't get good yeast development with butter fat over 50%. So that 20% and 50% benchmark is very important. All right, so I'm gonna scrape it and we'll show you. And again, you guys are gonna be shocked at how long this took. And if I hadn't made this yesterday, I would have assumed I could pull this together really quickly like I have in the past. Because why? Because I always make it at Christmas time. And when you work in a drier environment that's cold, this will come together very fast. So I don't know any better example or what a great time to be doing this recipe to literally show you how time, temperature, and humidity changes so many things. It's just incredibly fascinating. So the next thing we added was egg, a whole egg. Whole eggs have egg white and they have egg yolk. In the egg white we have protein, more protein. Protein structure, that's what gives us the strength, but it also has water, which is very important. And then it has a yolk. The yolk is fat, which is great. That adds a creaminess and a tenderness, but it has emulsifiers. Lecithin is an emulsifier, which means typically water and oil won't do this. But an emulsifier coats all of them, so then when they touch each other, they like each other. It brings people together. It brings the ingredients together, which is great. They start dancing on the dance floor. They start dancing in the mixer bowl, and they don't like each other in the beginning, but that lecithin does its job. That's why when you talk about adding a pudding or a commercial mix, those are commercial grade emulsifiers, and they work like lightning. Egg is natural. It's a miracle, but it takes a little bit of time. All right, so we're getting there. After that, we have the lemon. Okay, so what else does that do? It's a structure builder with the egg whites. It's a softener with the yolk, and the egg works with the milk. It works with the milk to create a symbiosis and an alchemy that gives you structure with the flour. The milk is the moisture that allows the glutens to begin to get activated. The egg also has water in it. But anyway, they work together to build structure, which is great. All right, what else? So next we have the lemon zest. And like I said, I have on this chart on my Substack that these things are optional. You can do vanilla extract, lemon, orange, you can do bitters, you can do whatever you want, but you should weigh those. I did the lemon zest of one whole lemon, that's 1%. Going back to the egg was 10%. So we have 20% sugar, 17% butter, 10% egg, and 1% lemon zest. The lemon zest gives us essential oils and flavor, and it balances sweet. So by the time we add the white fondant glaze, we're going to need a little balance. And I think the lemon does that. That's why I personally chose lemon. Okay, you guys have to see this. Look what's going on. Wow, that's amazing. So what I do want to do, because we're not getting, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So it is not a perfect ball. And again, if this were winter time and there was no humidity and it was really dry, sorry about the camera, and it was really dry, I would probably go ahead and put the dough hook on here. But I need two hands to do this. I don't want to stretch. Okay, I'm going to put it back over here. So if it were cold or we didn't have a lot of moisture in the air, I would go ahead and put the dough hook on there. But I know based on my work yesterday and how hot it is here right now, that I need to go ahead and leave it on the paddle a little bit longer. I'm just going to put that down. Not much though, I need to keep an eye on it. And what I'm looking for is the bottom to come up. If you're wondering, how am I deciding? It's because, see that bottom part right at the bottom, how it's stuck? I'm going to give it just a minute more. And you can start to see that there's like a trail. That's a good sign. And eventually you'll hear a thwack. And that's called soufflage. And that is when the dough gets to a point where air or oxygen's being slapped into it. And that is a really good stage. I'm going to give it just a second longer to see if the bottom can pull up. And it's starting to. This is getting really hot. And my bowl feels warm. And just for fun, because I think we don't want this to get, yesterday got really hot. I don't think we want to get it above 77. But it's going to be just because of the temperature. So I'm going to take this off. Let it naturally fall. And then I'm going to switch to the dough hook. Now the difference between like a spiral hook and this, and why this is less efficient, this is not efficient. If you look at a spiral dough hook, it's more efficient, creates less heat because it creates less friction. So look, it's not really sticking to my spatula, it's popping right off. It really gets on there. All right, this is what my bowl looks like, okay? So what I want to do is take this bowl scraper, and I'm going to take the round edge, I'm going to bend it like this, and I am going to very sharply and quickly clean up the edges. Because I want all that in there. It's going to get picked up. That's what it's called, pick up. I'm going to turn this way and pull it off to the side and make sure the bottom has been. If you want, with a very sharp, quick movement, you can flip it over and look how it doesn't stick. That's dry, that's a good sign. I'm really glad to see that. And this is what it's looking like. And you can see it pulling on the edge there. It's sort of stuck and it's pulling. So it's getting dry. Did I not do that long enough? Sorry. Okay, so it's dry. Let me see what it looks like. Yep, when I touch it, it doesn't stick. That's good. That's a good development. And when I was in school, you know, or when I would teach bread, you have the whole classroom walk by, switch to a dough hook, increase speed to medium, approximately 10 minutes. And just for fun, I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes. That will give us a nice internal reminder. It doesn't mean it's done. We're going to use our thinking, our thoughts, we're going to respond, and we're going to take a choice. We're going to make a choice of what we're going to do. So you can definitely see how see that over here? It sticks and then it joins. And eventually we are going to start hearing a slapping sound. That is a very good development with this dough. And as soon as it starts slapping, I'll bring you back over here. And you can hear it with the machine. So we are using so many of our spidey senses, our sense of hearing, sight, smell, touch. So everyone walks by the same bowl of dough and touches it, and everyone says something different. It's sticky. Oh, it's dry. It's firm. Oh, it's soft. We all have different words and explanations for what we're experiencing. What needs to happen is you begin to make and do this enough that you develop a vocabulary that actually is a mirror of what's going on in the bowl. It's coming together really nicely. You can see it's just getting drier. And you saw how long that first stage took. Yeah, it's really starting to come together nice. And I don't want to take, it smells yeasty and sweet. It smells nice. I don't want to go too fast. So we're going to listen. It's really going to start to sound like it's slapping. And you can kind of hear it. So the next ingredient that's really important, we talked about with all-purpose flour. All-purpose flour is always 100%. That's how we do baker's percentage. And this is King Arthur. I like King Arthur because it has stable moisture percentages. They age it, and it's always the same. That's very important. Now, if you're doing local flour, you're going to get variability, but you're going to get other things that are wonderful. So I love locally grown artisan flour. It's just got a lot more in it, and it's old school wheat. So you get a lot of the bran and the fat. You hear that? And a lot of protein. You can hear it. So this is going to give us the structure, and this AP is going to balance strength and structure, and that's why I chose AP over unbleached bread flour. And then instant yeast. So on the clock, we have 7 minutes left, and I'm just gonna leave it. I'm not gonna second guess it. I like how it's looking. Our instant yeast is the only yeast I will use. I don't like active dry, it's half dead. I honestly don't know why it's on the market. So instant yeast looks like this. They call it rapid rise. I don't know why they call it that. I think the entire situation's confusing. Okay, see how it says rapid rise? Okay, it's so fast acting, right? It's like, it's crazy making. Honestly, what you wanna do is go and do this. Nope. Nope, it's just instant yeast. There you go, instant yeast. Instant yeast is, they grow yeast in different environments and then they spray it. And these are made, instant's made with a lower temperature, so more survive. Yeast is a single-celled microorganism. All that means, I say they're people. They eat, they expel. See, we're already at 86 degrees, which is really, really high. But that is why I put this in the refrigerator. It starts fermenting immediately. So instant yeast is a modern wonder. Yes, it is very quick. That's why it's really nice to rest it in the refrigerator overnight. If you make a dough with yeast and it rises and you get it right in the oven and you do everything, all that undigested stuff is in your belly. If you allow some things to sit and ferment overnight, and you use less instant yeast than more, and you're not going for speed and lift, and you're really developing things, you're gonna get a more subtle, better product. And I do like instant yeast, you just have to understand how to use it. And then we have whole milk, which is over 3% fat, 88% water in our whole milk, and then 8 or more % of solids. Solids are our proteins and our sugars. And this gives us obviously moisture. It helps with leavening because any water is going to steam and that leavens and lightens. Gives us tenderness because of the fat, and it makes our crust what it is. We need a liquid, so instead of using water, we are using milk. Now this recipe allows you to choose between powdered milk and buttermilk. Buttermilk, I already explained, I didn't use because I wanted more fat, but it's lovely. And then non-fat milk solids, which is what milk powder is at the grocery store, is not appropriate for yeast. Remember, yeast are people. They don't like low temp milk powder. So what you want to get is a baker's dry milk, high heat powdered milk. And what it does is it makes it so that whenever, now if you use this and not milk, you don't use them together, you use this, you have to hydrate it. That's why I don't like adding milk powder to cookies unless you add the appropriate amount of water. So if you use high heat milk powder, non-fat milk solids, NFMS, you need to hydrate it with water before adding. It goes in a certain order. So you have to pay attention to the details there. The dough is way higher than it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be at like 77 degrees and it's like in the 80s. And that's because it started out hot. I've got a lot of friction and it's really hot in my kitchen. But I'm not gonna worry about that because I am not proofing it right now and I'm not bench resting it. Because if you do that, it's just already hot and it really hasn't had a time to mature. So I'm going to be putting it into an oiled bowl and then into the freezer actually, so that I can thaw it in the cooler next week and use it to show you how to bake. I'm going to use this from yesterday to do my shape and make the cinnamon rolls. I'm going to pan them up and then I'm going to freeze them and then I'm going to bake them next week. And I am going to temp the dough just so I can show you. Let me show it to you and then I'm going to pull it out. So this is what it looks like. Slow it down just a little bit. See how there's that trailing part? And then I'm going to stop it. And so it's a little sticky, you can see. So I'm going to keep going for the final minute. I'm going to lock this down because I want to lock down. So here's going to be a tricky part. If you are not really comfortable handling dough, you are going to find this dough to be sticky. And you are going to want to add flour to it. And I don't want you to add any flour. But what you're going to want to do is work quickly to tighten it a bit. I'm going to put oil into this glass bowl. I'm going to oil the bowl because I'm going to put my dough in there and then I'm going to flip it over. All around. I have a plastic that I'm actually going to put on the dough to touch. I'm going to move my mixer out of the way. This is very hot. Let me get this out of here. I will clean it later. That's how it's lasted 30 years. I keep it clean. So this is where you have to believe in yourself and you have to work quickly, and don't worry if you stretch it or rip it or tear it. But you want to be in the practice working toward the best outcome. So even if you don't get it exactly right, go ahead and think of the right way. If you do this enough, you will get there. So I'm going to lift. I'm going to lift the dough hook out, but I'm not going to stretch it. I want to slide it out without ripping it. Sincerely, try not to rip it. It should all pop right off. Then I'm going to take a quick temperature. Like I said, it's supposed to be around 77, and we're at 87. So it's really hot. Not a big deal, but if I were mixing it up, if I were going to turn this out, put it in the bowl, and then leave it, it would be like proofed in 10 minutes. That's not bad. It just means the directions actually say proof it for 2 hours. You have to think, it's hot. It's already at the temperature it's going to be. So what's happening in here? Okay, we took our little yeast guys, and they were all frozen, instantly frozen. And then we added water, and then we added warmth, okay? So now they're like a human. They're like, ooh, this warm weather makes me feel like I can touch my toes again. I'm flexible, you know? And I think I'm gonna go for a swim or go running. Even though on a cold day, you'd be real slow and all tense and tight. But they're all waking up. And so they're all eating all of the starch, because basically your flour is protein and starch, carbohydrates, and that's basically sugar. So your guys are in there, they're waking up now, they're awake, and they're active. And they're going to start eating the starches and then expelling CO2, and that is how you get bubbles. That's how it starts to grow. It's just people eating food and expelling gas, okay? So what we're going to do is, instead of putting it in here and covering it and letting it, you know, rise and get soft so that I can then pat it out and make my cinnamon rolls and then let them proof and get them in the oven. I'm not going to do all that right now. That'll take me another couple of hours. I'm going to round this out. I'm going to talk about what that means. Put it in here, flip it over so the oil's on the top, cover it to touch. I have a label. It's going in the freezer. I'm not going to think about it until next Tuesday when I pull it out and put it in my cooler. And I want you to hear this about yeast. When you put yeast into the refrigerator, you are not killing them and you are not stopping them. You are slowing them down. That is why I put this in here yesterday and it was low, and now look how high it is, even though it's been in the refrigerator. They're still alive, they're still eating, they're still expelling, they're just not doing it as fast as when they're warm. But when I put it into the freezer, they'll stop pretty much. Stop. That way I can pull them out next Tuesday, put them in the cooler, it'll get a nice tempering, and they'll start to do that. I'm going to use this, and some people say you want to sprinkle a little flour on top of your bowl to get it out. With this, we do not want to do that. With other breads, maybe, but not with this one. So I sharply get the edges out. So I clean up the edges, and then I am going to make sure that I'm not tearing it. And I'm going to dump it onto the counter. It's very sticky, okay? This is where you have to have faith in your abilities and that you can do it. Now, a little bit of water might not be a bad thing, but I say that and I really mean not a lot, okay? So what we want to do at this point is use this guy, and we like it because it's stiff. This is our bench scraper or a bench knife, indispensable. So I could try to pick this up, but it's going to stick. So if I were to pull like this, you can see it's going to stretch, and that's not good. So what I want to do is use this guy to help start. Do you see how I stretched that? I didn't push it. I wasn't mean. So you're going to sharp and lift and just let it naturally fall. But that Stretching is helping to develop the gluten. So I'm going to do that and see how it doesn't stick. Isn't that fascinating? And some of this is because, and I haven't made yeast dough in a little while. Some of this is because I'm skilled. And if yours is sticking, again, you cannot get this. People learn how to do this in the classroom all the time, and you can't. But I do want you to see, those are rips, okay? I see that on people's videos all the time, and obviously it happens. What you need to do is let your dough rest. That's not good, so you want to avoid it. So here's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to move quickly, and then I'll move the camera back. But here we go. What I want to do is to try to use my hands, move quickly, and just by doing this, it is going to get less sticky, okay? So I am not pulling or ripping it. I am letting the dough, I'm very gentle. I'm letting the dough get pulled over, and I'm gonna do this a few more times. And see how it's even getting less sticky to the countertop than it was? And when it gets to a certain point that I feel like I can round it out, I'm going to round it. Okay, but here's what you need to know. See that? When you stretch it, that whole thing stretches like a balloon, like a sausage casing. And you have a top and a bottom. So when I round it, I'm like this. I'm going to pull that around and pull it toward me underneath. Can you see that? Watch. I'm going to do it again. Okay. See how that stretches? Beautiful. And then, what's even more beautiful is look at that. We have our first bubble baby. So I'm going to put this in here with this down. I'm going to flip it over so the oil's on the top. Now you want a bowl that is taller than it is wide. We want this supported as it grows. That helps give it some structure and the ability to lift. And we're going to move on to the shaping of our dough, because I have another dough we can use, and you'll learn how to make the cinnamon roll. So what I'm going to do with my plastic, and I have two freezers. One is my home, it's like a home freezer in the kitchen. The other is in the other room. It's really small, but it's firmer, okay? It's like, makes it harder. It's just dedicated, and it's small, and it stays hard. So I don't want to push this. I want to take my hand and lift the plastic and let it drop, okay? Because I don't want there to be an air gap, and I don't want a skin to grow. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to get another plastic. Told you this was going to be challenging for me. I can't even talk to you guys. And then get it nice and tight. Plastic wrap works on tension. So you pull it and put it down. If yours isn't sticking, you need to lift it and pull it. Pull. This should be okay. And then I have a label. What time is it? 7:30 p.m. 7:30 p.m. Now this would be more relevant if I was using it soon, but like, here we go. I'm going to take you with me to take this into the other room, into my storage area. But here's my little freezer. I don't want to leave it open. There are my pies that I freeze, my frozen dog food, and then some nuts. This is a pie from April. Rhubarb, cinnamon top. There we go. I don't want it to be sideways. There we go. Boom, boom. Isn't that great? So we are going to move to the next phase, which is to make, I'm a little nervous because this is exciting. We need to make our dough into cinnamon rolls. I've decided I want them big. I don't want to make small ones. And cinnamon rolls have the cinnamon sugar mixed in at the end, because if you mix cinnamon into a yeast dough, it's antimicrobial. That's why cinnamon is, like a natural healer for bacteria and for cuts. But yeast don't like it because it kills stuff. It kills, live things. So we are going to pat this out. I'm going to use as little flour as I can. I'm going to use a ruler because I want it to be an exact size. And then I'm going to add the sugar and cinnamon mix. I'm going to roll it, pinch it, cut it, and then place them. And these are my options for placing. I have different pan options, and I'm not attached to any of them. I'm going to sort of see what we've got here, but I want to show you what your options are. Number one, you can do cinnamon rolls in anything, metal, glass, or silicone. This is one of those cardboard bakers. If you wanted to put these in here, you could just give this away, or you could bag it. And just like I'm doing now, I'm going to make these cinnamon rolls and put them in here in the raw state. So if I were to freeze it like I'm going to and bake it next week, you can do this if you have a farmer's market or a business and you're wondering, how can I get fresh cinnamon rolls every day? Because you could do minis, you know, and just have them frozen and pop them in during dinner service, or proof them when you get there for prep. So that's one option, the cardboard. The silicone is an insulator. So if you do your cinnamon rolls in here, you're not going to get the heat transfer you do with metal. That's okay. Maybe you want it to be softer. I want to get a good bake and good heat transfer so I get nice height. But this is one way. If you're using glass or silicone, be aware it's an insulator and you're going to have a slower, softer bake. You're not going to get the crust the way that you will in metal. If you want to bake on a sheet tray, so I think it's going to go on a quarter sheet tray. I have one of two choices, and everyone does it differently. If you want the bottom to be softer and not get too dark, you can use a silpat. If you want more heat transfer, because that's going to slow heat and keep it from getting too dark. This is a silpat. It has fiberglass in it, so you're probably not going to get a soggy bottom. But if you are using what looks like a silpat but is really just silicone, you might get like a lot of moisture on the bottom, and that's not good. But if you want a crispier bottom, better heat transfer, you want nice oven spring, you're going to use parchment. I have to make a decision. I think I'm going to do silicone because I think I want soft but well baked, and I think this is the combo. And then I'm going to use this cake collar. They go this way. And so when I build my sweet rolls, I'm going to build them in here. And I'm going to spray the edges with spray so they don't stick. I'm going to freeze them and bag them and label them, and then I'll pull them into the cooler next Tuesday, and then I can bake them when you guys get here on Wednesday. I could do a single. So if you had a big sheet tray or a half sheet tray and you had 10 of these, you could put one cinnamon roll and bake them this way and serve them individually. That's kind of fun. And you could use metal, but metal, and this is heavy, nice heavy metal, is going to give a nice heat transfer. And then the last thing I want to show you is these little 4x4 pans I got from Crown Cookware. I did all of my brownie finals in here because I didn't want to keep making giant batches, and I think this would be great for one single giant cinnamon roll. So I'm going to put these back over there. We are getting so close to the fun part, which is putting stuff together. So this is the other thing we're going to do. We have 113 grams of cinnamon sugar that we need. That comes down to 5.7 grams of cinnamon and 113 grams of sucrose. But I'm not going to mix them together in this small one. I'm going to take these apart. I'm going to put them in a half deli. Actually, I think I'm going to put them in a full so I can mix them together. And I'm going to add the sucrose first, and then I'm going to add the cinnamon. And can you see that? Cinnamon should be fresh so that it's moist and it still has smell. If it has, it smells like right off the tree. If it does not have smell, then you're not going to get good cinnamon flavor, and your cinnamon's old. Find a fun way to do something with it. So I'm going to take this little whisk and I'm going to do a little sand project until it's all mixed up. And so you can't do this by color. You can do whatever you want, but I like to measure it. The industry standard is sort of the 5%. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there off to the side. To gather some tools, this is my big John Boos cutting board. I have, as you can see, a little John Boos table. I like working with yeast dough on wood better than anything in the world, and the reason is it's a lot like our rolling pins. They retain natural oils, we oil them, and they become naturally non-stick. So when you add a yeast dough to this, it's not going to stick. And it actually has like a feel. It has pores, it has a feel. like Formica and marble and all that other stuff is just not the same. So I really like using this John Booth cutting board, and I have 2 rolling pins, and I have 2 choices. Do you see how this one gets wider in the middle and this one's straight? I like that's narrower. I personally like this one because when it gets fatter in the middle, if I have a fat area, it's like that middle part, I can just like drive the direction of my dough. This is more like a blunt object. This is like, people do this. You're not supposed to use your wrists, okay? You're supposed to stand at your table, knees bent a little relaxed, and you're supposed to do this and lift it quite a bit. And I actually only go in one direction. I never go back and forth. I go in one direction and I lift. Now you'll often see me do this and it looks like I'm going back, but I'm actually lifting it up. So rolling is just like what I did with rounding a dough. It actually takes a lot of experience, but you don't need a lot of flour. The flour I use, and it's called your bench flour because you want to keep it separate from your other flours because it's going to get somewhat contaminated, and it's going to, if you put it back in with the flour, if you have an allergy, like a dairy or something like that, you are going to have an interaction if you commingle. So that's why I keep it separate. I also use bread flour because bread flour has less starch in it. If you picture the proteins being this way and you have this much starch in a bread flour and this much protein in all-purpose and this much starch, and then in cake you have this and this much starch, all that starch is going to absorb the moisture and parts, little bits of my dough at the small microscopic level. So the reason that bench flour is typically bread flour is because it doesn't absorb all of that. And what you want to do is dust this with so little flour that you're almost not even dusting it. You just want it to be a little bit. And we're going to leave what we need up there. Now at this point, this bowl is wet. It's like a bain-marie situation. You don't want that moisture interacting with your table. So I'm going to take this off. We're going to take a look at it. This has been, you saw me take it out of the fridge. I don't know how long it's been out, but you can see that there aren't those bubbles like we saw on the dough that was just done. Like it had already gotten a CO2 bubble, right? And then when I push on here, it's not doing much. I'm okay with that because I don't want it to proof a lot because I'm going to be freezing it. Every time you proof it and rework it, the yeast are still eating a limited amount of food. So you need to control every stage of it. You don't want to over ferment it because you won't get the structure that you need. So what I'm going to do, we get another bowl scraper, and I don't want the moisture on there. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to do this, and then I want the top to be down. Okay, there we go. The top is down. And I could theoretically go ahead and put more flour on here, but I don't even know what we're dealing with. So I'm just going to pick some of this up. It's very light. I think it is sticky enough that I'm going to go ahead and put just a little. But what I want to do, and this is, some people say punch it. I want to begin to push it out, and I don't even need to roll it yet. I need to just let it relax. I'm not going to pull it and use my thumbs to pull, okay? I'm gonna do this, and we're going to allow it to start to warm up and kind of stretch on its own. I am going to use a ruler to get it to the right size. I just need to check my notes. And, oh, I know where it is. It's actually up here. Remember I put my recipe up here? For rolling out the dough, I want this dough to be a 14 by 12 inch rectangle. That's for large rolls. If you do it too thin when you roll it out, it will be tough and chewy. So we need the right thickness so it stays nice and plump. And right now we're looking at this, okay? So take this and we say, how thick is this? By inches, it's 3/4 of an inch, and we want it to be more like 2/3. And see, I wish I had these in millimeters or centimeters. 14 by 12. So I have an 18-inch long ruler. It's sanitary. I'm going to do 12 in this direction and 14 in this direction. I'm going to go ahead and start to move it out. See how it doesn't even stick and how it's like wet? You can see that's the fat. It's not really the water because it's not sticking. And I want to go ahead and get it into a rectangular shape. and not worry about the size yet. And I'm going to take that thick part in the center, because the center of your dough is always the thickest. And I'm going to push it out. But see how I also move these into the corners? It's really quite magical. Okay, so now, this is our stance. We're not going to use our thumbs. We're going to put a little flour in our hands, but we're going to go underneath it. We're going to go underneath it, and we're going to sort of shrink it back up, because when you roll it out, you basically push it out and agitate it. You are, so I'm going to get a read on here. We are at 12 by 11, so I don't have to go much further. And I'm heading, you always want to be heading in the direction of where you're going. So that's why if you start out with a shape closer to the finished product, you don't have to work your dough as much. So I'm going to let it shrink in. It's going to get smaller again. And then I'll go, how big is this? 11 by 12. All right. So now I can be a little more aggressive, and it's getting a little sticky. There we go. I don't want to be aggressive. I just want to push it past where I think it's going to go, because when I shrink it back, I can put it back into the size, even if you push it beyond. Let's say you get it to 16 by 14. You can do this, okay? Because right now, this is 16 by 12. So I actually don't want it to go any narrower, but I want it to be shorter. So I am going to lift it up and shrink it, and I'm going to get it into shape. Do you hear the thunder out there? Getting another storm. My hands are really good for knowing, like if I just think, I can feel where it's thinner and thicker, and I decide if that's okay. Okay? So then I'm going to measure it. We need 12 by 14. It's around 15, so I can just kind of do this. Okay, this is where it's fun. We are going to leave this end about that wide without any of the cinnamon sugar, okay? Because we want to pinch the yeast dough together. Now, if I were to put a lot of flour on here and I went to crimp the dough, it's going to be dry and it's not going to stick. That moisture is its own sort of adhesive. So I am going to put the cinnamon around all the way to the ends. And when I talk about mixing things together so that you're already in the right direction, you can see how carefully thinking about the cinnamon sugar already has it mixed properly. Like we're already in the direction of having the right amount of cinnamon in every bite. When I talk about consistency, I don't want the cinnamon rolls on the end to have no cinnamon or to be a chunk too much in the middle or uneven. I want this, when it is sliced, to be beautiful. So I'm going to take my bench flour. I do not need it anymore as far as I know. And I'm going to put it over here. I'm going to use my fingers to just make sure. And you can even tell it's starting to dissolve because it's interacting with moisture. And I'm going to use my hands, which really are a nice gauge, to see that it's smooth. There we go. It smells amazing. All right, so here's another, people get nervous. What you want to do is lift and curl it like that. But you want to stop a little bit and kind of lift and turn this under. Don't be afraid to touch it. At this point, you're not going to overwork it. But you are pulling it and turning it to get a tight roll, and you want it to imagine when you slice it that it's really even. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. And if this is starting to get shrunk and you need it to go and be even, then open it up a bit. But you want to be lifting and turning it inward. Don't just roll. Lift and turn. So you're going to be thinking. You're not just going to do it. You're going to think and try to imagine. Now we can cut off the ends to make it look better. Always clean it up. And those can be little tasters. But I want this to be a little longer. We're not getting enough on the edge here. So I'm pulling it toward me and continuing to roll it. All right, and then I'm going to take this part and I'm going to make sure it's even, okay? At this point, I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to pinch this seam. pinch the seam. Some people take egg wash on this part so that they can make it stick together better, but I'm not going to do that. I don't have too much flour. And then we're going to roll this over so that the seam is down. Okay? Now you can actually bake this if you want to, put it in the oven after it's proofed, and then slice it when it's warm and serve it that way. That is an option. Right now, if I don't continue to work quickly, this is going to proof, and I don't want it to do that. I want to stop it. I'm going to take the ruler, and I'm going to do these at 1 3/4 wide. So that's pretty wide. And here's one thing you can do. You can do the middle, and then the middle, and then the middle, and the middle, and that's fine. Or you can measure 1 3/4. So I'm going to do 1 3/4, and I'm just going to make a mark. 1 3/4. I'm going to make marks 3/4. I'm telling you guys I'm bad at math. I make all these lines. These are very thick. That is how you are going to get a really big, nice, beautiful, it's just a normal, good size cinnamon roll that's going to get nice and big and thick. I'm going to work as fast as I can so that this does not, I don't want to slide a lot. I want to get these apart so they don't start sticking to themselves. And I don't want to lose a lot of cinnamon. I want to cut straight. All right, there we go. I'm going to start with this guy and then just see what happens. I really like this little pan. And you guys can see what this batch will give you. And we do not need to do the bottom where our sill pad is. So I'm going to do 3 across, and I'm not going to take the edges. I'm going to do 1. I'm going to put it in the center, and they need to be about 1/2 inch away from each other so they can grow into one another while they're being proofed and also in the oven. And what happens if you have them too far apart, and you want them to look pretty, don't smush them. What happens if they're too far apart is they will not rise up the edges. 1/2 inch from the edge and each other, these are going to fill in nicely. And this guy I'm going to put into its own little tray. So this is what these look like. And I'm going to go stick these in the freezer, and then I will wrap them completely. And I want them all to be nice and straight. So I'm going to go do that. I'll be right back. So you could do a smaller one in like a muffin pan. For now, I'm going to put this into a deli cup, and I'm going to get it in the freezer. When you have wood like this, you only scrape in the direction of the grain. Do not scrape against the grain. This is how you clean wood. You do not put the wood into the sink, and you do not need to use soap. And people ask me about this all the time because they think it's not sanitary. But this is a hard wood, meaning it's kind of naturally antimicrobial. The fats that seal it and create this ring, it shows how long you've had one, cures it. And they just stay clean. It's wood. It's like nature's miracle. So this is clean. I just wipe it off, put it over there, and I do the same with my John Boos. And because I just wiped it, and because there's a little residual moisture on there, I take this John Boos oil right away. This is how, when I talk about how I maintain things, I literally mean everything has to just be done as a habit, as a practice, and that is my practice. And it stays and just beautiful. Wood is a natural item. Anything that's lovely and nice and expensive needs to be taken care of. It's like your job, your honor, your responsibility to take care of beautiful, natural tools. And a wood board or table is one of those things. I'm going to be wrapping and labeling those, but next week we are going to come back. I'm going to take the dough that you watched me make today. We are going to make it up just a little differently and put it into pans for a caramel sticky bun. One of which you can add nuts to, raisins, whatever you want. And we will talk about how to bake it and how to get it to be well baked, but soft, tender, light, chewy, all the stuff that you want and very sweet. And I will mix up the toppings and you'll get to see me do all that. And then I'm gonna bake the one I just made that's getting firm that I'm gonna cover with a bun bag and a label. I'm gonna bake that while we talk and make up our sticky buns and our toppings and talk about dough. So that's it. How long can it stay in the freezer before it gets killed? It will not get killed. What will happen is things will degrade. Just like, so I say generally anything that goes in the freezer for quality's sake should be 3 months or less. That is why I date it and why I run things through my freezer. I'm very careful about running product through my kitchen. And that is respect for the food, the flow of food, respect for everything in the kitchen is important. And it begins with how you treat the food. I don't like to waste anything. I compost. But yeast won't die in the freezer because the freezer doesn't stop bacteria growth. It slows it remarkably. Can you put it in the fridge if you want to make it the next day? Yes, that's a great question. Absolutely. Yes. And what I'm going to do with the cinnamon rolls I just made, I pan them and I'm going to freeze them, but I'm going to pull them the day before so they're in the refrigerator. They're going to thaw and the yeast are going to start to become active. Slower than room temperature, slower than in a warm proofer, which in my case is a heating pad and a plastic box. The moisture lives in the dough. You don't need to add ice cubes or hot water or anything. You just need to give it a warm environment that's enclosed, and that moisture will begin to coat the exterior of the dough so it can expand. But if I wanted to right now take those out of the freezer, cover them to touch, and put them in the refrigerator tomorrow, this is what I would do at Christmas time. I would make them, they would go in the refrigerator, and then in the morning we would pull them 2 hours before we wanted to proof them. Bake them. So they would come out and for 2 hours they would warm up and proof, which means you would see them start to rise. And I'll teach you next week how to tell if something's proofed enough or overdone or not enough. And then you just bake them. And then you put the glaze on warm, but not hot. So you pull them out of the oven and as they're cooling, you glaze them as they're still warm and it's amazing. So yeah, this is the most versatile, functional thing that you could incorporate into your life. It could be great for your business. It's very versatile and you can make these up in a lot of different ways. So this is not a brioche. It's not 50% or more butter. It's under 20% butter, but it's not hard. It's going to be soft and lovely, but we are going to get a crust on the top. So I want everyone to be aware that that is this style. And if you can get your hands on The Bread Baker's Apprentice by Peter Reinhardt, I mean, they call it is the bread Bible. He is the guy. I love Peter. I love, Jeffrey Hamelman a lot. But I've met him and Jeffrey Hamelman. I really love Jeffrey Hamelman. This is another way to find out how, people say, who do I use? Look, not always, because there's some bad books out there that I don't know how they got people to say they were good. Nancy Silverton, Laura Brody, Charles Von Over, Peter Franklin. Look these people up and you can begin to build your yeast dough bread library. Is there anything I'm missing for today? Yeah, in a hot kitchen, we want our dough to not get above 77, but that's just going to happen in a hot kitchen. That's why I used the only thing I can control. Cold milk, cold eggs. I could have used colder butter, cold liquids. We control the water temperature when we're doing yeast dough. That slows the yeast down. We control a lot of things and we make a lot of choices when we're baking. And that is where I really am trying to get people to realize that when you read a recipe, you do not need to follow it exactly. You need to understand that the things that are in your control are the things that you need to be observing, thinking about, and understanding. So you take control of that. The bread, they say yeast dough and bread teaches you more about yourself. You think that you are going to learn how to control bread when actually the bread is teaching you how to think and how to let go of anxiety and whatever. That's why I compare baking to yoga. It's about building this practice of intuition and responding. Just because you're worried or have a feeling or something isn't going well or something's challenging or it didn't work out, it's how you respond to it and know that everything that's happening is just happening temporarily and that you can always redo something and try it again, but you're learning. We roll our cinnamon rolls out on a silicone mat to avoid having a bunch of bench flour. Absolutely. I do that when I do my pie doughs. You are absolutely correct. The less flour, the better. And if you can do it that way, if you have a silicone mat, I especially a silpat? Do you flip them upside down so they don't slide around? Because that was a great trick I learned years ago. For the next step, part 2 of the cinnamon roll, I'm going to come back Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm going to do the part 2 of the cinnamon bun, cinnamon roll recipe. And I am going to bake the ones that I have in the freezer. We are going to talk about proofing, bench resting, and then we can talk about the different fillings, icings, and garnishes. So on Wednesday, we will have a continuation of the PoP Baking Club, and we will be finishing part 2 of the cinnamon roll production process. Maybe I'll see you on Saturday if you have questions preemptively, because if you plan on baking it this weekend, between now and then, you can do your scaling, you can read the recipe, you can go to your library and pick up these books. You can pre-scale the glazes, you can do whatever you want, but you can get prepared and think. And I promise you, in that practice, you will have questions that aren't just basic or already in the notes. You will have next level connections that you have already made that are like miracles. And I will be able to clarify and get you going in the right direction. Thanks everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your week. But what I want everyone to understand is, because there are all these hacks, all these cheats, why are you hacking and cheating? If you want to bake, learn to bake. Learn to bake the right way. Enjoy it. Make it yours. I want to say something else, and I want to bring this up next week. The hack for adding cream or milk to the top of raw cinnamon dough is so not a good idea, and it's not used by professionals, and I think I will get into that next week. Bye. Bye, everyone. Happy baking. Have a wonderful week. I'll see you Saturday. Bye.